Yo, 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 it's ODB from OLP. Thanks for coming back and rocking with us with another episode. I believe it's 372 that we're on. And on this episode, I'm going to do a deep dive of sorts into some key facts about the famed MiniTruckin Magazine. Now, I want to give a huge shout out to our title sponsor, Scraping the Coast. You know, I always talk about them, STC for short, every June in Biloxi. We can't wait for June 2025, typically towards the end of the month in June. We'll be out there. We hope that you can join us. It's an amazing show. What I'm going to continue to transition into doing is trying to produce shorter content. So I know that I've said this for some time, and we had some shorter episodes and things like that. But I think as we continue moving into through the 9th year into our 10th year, you're going to continue to see these episodes kind of streamline some, and then some of the things that we normally would talk about on the podcast, I'll share via social media. An example of that, I'm going to do a video this week to talk about Hammered Weekend Wear. They've got 2 new releases on their website right now, HAMMERD, weekendwear.com. And as an example, they have the C10 shirt, which is the custom hammered shirt. And they also have Low Stakes, which is a shirt they're referring to as No Dice. An older MIC build. This truck is owned by Doug. It was his wife's truck. She passed away. She was really passionate about it. So 2 really cool, a full-size Chevy, mini truck, Toyota, those type of things. Now, granted, I'm saying that now just as an example because what I'm going to try to do going forward is cut back on the content here and then cover it through social media. So that's an example of something that I would cover through Facebook and Instagram, since we're not really on we're also on YouTube, but we're not on TikTok. We're not on some of those other platforms, as an example. So that's something I wanted to reinforce. I also wanted to thank those that chimed in. I appreciate everybody that watches through YouTube because it helps the channel. Our show for years was audio only, so I have, kind of attracted most of the audio only listeners. And what I would ask is, hey, if that's your preferred way to listen, no problem. But if you can, if let's say you're a truck driver and you can pull up YouTube and listen and let it play, all of those minutes watched certainly help the channel and the algorithms and all that kind of stuff. So I appreciate it. So I say all that because some of you guys have chimed in with the new mic setup. You said, hey, I like it. I do too. I kind of think I figured out a few of the little things that were driving me crazy, and as some of you picked up on, I didn't hear some of the popping in the last episode because I'm able to scan through it a little bit quicker now. But what I noticed is that it was probably overgained on my mixer, so hopefully that will resolve out. And I do have the pop filter that you can see if you're watching through YouTube. So with all that being said, I'm going to continue to kind of refine things, but I will tell you, the video aspect, and I got to thank Brandon Burrell with Modified Rides podcast. When he had me on as his first guest, which I'm very thankful for, I had delved into the video stuff. And the product that I had was good, but it just wasn't super user friendly. And I was like, what are you using? And he referred me to this product, and it's just made my podcasting and my interviewing, if you will, a lot easier. And they continue to refine. So those are just kind of a few things kind of behind the scenes that I wanted to reinforce. Again, I'm going to continue with the social media stuff. Social media, as you've noticed, I've gotten shorter and shorter with things. A lot of us, and this is no disrespect to anybody, but if you look at folks, we're on our phones, you're using your thumb, you're tapping, you're there for some little entertainment, a laugh, this and that. Everybody's social media existence or experience is a little bit different. Some go out there to go, hey, I'm going to go on YouTube and like me and figure out how to fix something. Other people go on, Instagram maybe for a quick laugh. So I want to continue offering that content, but I just know that the reach is really big there. So I'm going to continue to focus on that and hopefully pull back here a little bit. Now, Mike is not on this episode. I did actually just talk with him a few minutes ago. He's doing well, just a lot going on. And I said, hey, I'm going to get this episode out for Friday. And I'm also preparing already for the next episode. And that's going to be pretty cool. So we'll talk more about that as we get into that next week. Now, because these episodes are going to be a little bit shorter, I am going to, again, try to transition to giving the sponsors the shout outs through the social media post as well. But, when you think of Scraping the Coast and Hammered Weekend Wear, Lone Star Throwdown, Garage Gear Clothing, Colorado Custom Wheels, Southeast MiniTruckin Nationals, Local Rides Mag, The Freaking Weekend, one of our favorite shows now in Biloxi every September. A lot of good kinfolk out there, and I certainly appreciate all the partnership. I often talk with some of our partners, like Trip. Mike and I will talk with them and run ideas past them, and I'll say, "Man, I love you guys. The ideas that you have that might spark me to go, hey, maybe we should do this." So, we're always looking to kind of expand that. I've talked to a lot of show promoters recently, and it's cool to be able to consult with people that maybe their show has always just been kind of like there, but never, really popping off. And they kind of go, hey, I want to increase the presence. I want to, what are some of the things I need to do? So, those are always cool conversations that I like having with people. With that being said, I am going to go into just a quick one. This is a fun one, and it's going to tie into something that happens on Friday. And trust me, I'm getting ready to roll into the main topic, and that's all there's going to be for this issue, or for this episode rather. And that's the piece I like about being able to do the shorter content, right? Not having an hour episode every time. Some of you are going to love that. Some of you, like Randy and Tim, are going to come after me off the top rope. So we'll have to see. But this is going to tie into something that's going to happen on Friday, fingers crossed, this week. What year did Back to the Future 2 come out? Now, we know if Mike was here, he certainly wouldn't have got it. He doesn't know who Marty McFly is, I'm sure. Bonus for the Joey Whitbys and the Chad Lukes out there, because Joey has been around Chad with some of these trivia, and Chad has seen the anger. But the bonus is if you can guess the day that Back to the Future, BTTF for short, Part 2, what year did that film come out? Now, the hint is the original film came out in July of 85, okay? So you're thinking 85, they went back 30 years, they went forward 30 years, filmed basically late 84 into 85. And Part 2 came out on November 22nd, a day before my born day, in good old 1989. Another reason why I love that year, I still remember my dad taking my sister and I to the movies opening weekend. It was my birthday weekend, and we got to see Part 2. And the cool thing was, for those that remember or that are fans of the film, they had the teaser trailer, the trailer basically at the end saying, hey, the adventure's not over, come back in May of 1990 for Part 3. So it's pretty cool. It was one of the first times I know of that Part 2 and Part 3, so 2 films were filmed simultaneously to kind of cut down on the production costs. That allowed for them, of course, to be able to preview it at the end of Part 2. So November 22nd, good old 1989. And while I'm here talking about it, I should give a huge shout out to Garage Gear Clothing. Good kinfolk. The holidays are coming. They have a free shipping option depending on how much you spend. You want to go to garagegearclothing.com. They've got the garage ladies gear, the kids, the full sizes, the mini trucks. They've got it on lock. Shout out to Garage Gear Clothing. Okay, so the main topic of this episode, wow, not even 10 minutes in, and I'm at the main topic. And I am going to share my screen. Now, I will tell you this, at the end, I am going to give you some of my picks, ODB picks. Not picks as in photos, but like some of my favorite trucks, favorite covers. Now, I am going to continue to do things like this. We do have a few members on our YouTube channel, including Matt Nupp. So I want to thank him very much for the continued support. And if you want to become a member, you're going to see there are going to be some videos on the channel that are member specific. And I'm going to continue doing that because it takes a lot of time to put this stuff together. The good thing too, when I put together this MiniTruckin Magazine, what I'm calling OLP deep dive, I'm going to slice and dice some of the numbers. But the good thing is I'm not going to go over too much information. I'm going to go over some cool stuff, but I'm not going to give it all to you because there's really a lot of information, right? I mean, I could, some of the stuff, it's just too much. But if you're a MiniTruckin fan or a fan of the magazine or maybe a casual fan, I think you'll appreciate this information. So I'm going to start off here with the origins. So this is kind of a fun thing you may have never known. You probably never looked up. But MiniTruckin Magazine, of course, as I've stated in some other videos over the course of time, was a spinoff of the sister pub Truckin Magazine, which had started in the good old year of 1975. So basically 13 years prior, give or take. We've well documented that, including having Doug Culp on, in terms of the magazine itself. And I say Doug because Doug shot the first two covers. So issue 1, issue 2, Doug's a great guy living up in Tennessee. And it was neat that when he came to the Spark Show a few years ago, got a chance to have him meet Logan Wade and Matt. Of course, that resurrected MiniTruckin Magazine all those years later. So, I mean, how ironic was it in the same place in Tennessee, Sevierville, got Doug Culp, who shot the first issue of MiniTruckin Magazine, and then you got Matt and Logan. So pretty cool stuff. Now, something you may not know is the trademark was filed on April 30th of 1990. We can see that here in the screenshot if you're watching on YouTube. The official registration, the process was kind of completed on March 12th of 1991. And you got to think about when the summer of 88 rolls around, we'll talk about this. That was a summer special issue, if you will, kind of like a one-off, testing the waters. Hey, we think, all these kids, we see all these kids rolling in these trucks. We think this is going to be big, but let's kind of test the waters. And, it sells well. There's a demand. And then, you fast forward a couple years and they go, well, hey, we need to protect ourselves. Boom, do the trademark. You can use internet search and search a trademark search tool, and you can type this in. This is public information. Now, it is worth noting that, of course, when it was the mark, aka trademark, was registered, it's MiniTruckin without any space, and then there's the apostrophe on the end. Now, ironically enough, this trademark ran all the way up until October of 2021. So I'm not going to go into the whole thing. I think I've mentioned this in other videos, but you essentially have Motor Trend, right? Over the course of time, all these companies kind of collapse in, they get bought out, yada, yada, yada. You get to 2014 when a lot of the magazines shuttered, including MiniTruckin. They were a part of that. The website still exists. I mean, it's, in my opinion, not the best website, but I say all that because MiniTruckin still exists under kind of the Motor Trend to a certain extent, but they certainly don't have a trademark on it. Probably just they're not intending to do anything with it. Okay, so here's the fun part that I really enjoy kind of sharing this content. We're going to do a breakdown. So I'm going to break down a few things, not everything, but certainly, again, if you want to become a member on YouTube, I'm going to continue to break down, slice and dice the data even more. So when we look at the editors, this is kind of a fun thing, and I've had this data for a while, and now I'm ready to share it. We know from 1988 to 2014, that original run of MiniTruckin Magazine, there were 269 issues produced. Now, OLP is the only media group or person that I know of that ever compiled every issue. And I even made a short video showing every cover in less than, I think it was 90 seconds. So what I'm going to try to do now is go ahead and play that for those that are viewing here on YouTube. I think I'll be able to play this. neat to see them all together in just a quick swath, because it's crazy to think, 1988 all the way to 2014. That's a long time, just over 25 years, of course. And it's just pretty neat to see that. Now, if we go a little bit further and we look at the editors, which I want to do now, there's a grid on the right, and you can see, boom, the editor issue count. Now, although some of these folks worked in that, company for much longer, this is literally slicing and dicing. Go to the table of contents. Who was the editor? We knew when the changes were made. And essentially what you want to know is there were 6 editors. Seems kind of low over the course of time, right? 25 years. But something to keep in mind is Steve Stillwell, rest in peace. He was the editor for the longest period of time, about 7.5 years. That started in the summer of 88, and that went all the way to the end of 95, right? So technically, though, that was only 48 issues, because you're going to see in the beginning, it wasn't even bi-monthly. It was essentially quarterly, right? And then they kind of moved into that. So, again, rest in peace to Steve Stillwell. He was there about 7.5 years until the reign was turned over to Mike Shartsis, who has been on the podcast in the past. Shartsis took over, of course, January 96. They were turning over a new leaf. They had, presumably groomed Shartsis for that role, and he takes over the reign at issue number 49 in the list of things. Now, Mike Alexander receives the honors of being the editor for the most amount of issues. So if you're looking at the grid on the right, Mike Alexander had 80 issues under his belt as the editor. Lance Martz is basically a close second at 76 issues. And again, the significance of that only kind of just reinforces the folks' span of time that they were there with that role. Okay, so it's just kind of fun, if you will, for me to slice and dice that kind of stuff, because this stuff hasn't really been done for the most part prior. Now, Courtney Halliwell, rest in peace, he was the editor, believe it or not, for only 8 issues. And I covered this in a video that I'll link to at the end of this one. So if you can help us out and you can, click through to that next video, it's kind of the history of Street Trucks and why those original editors left. I talk a little bit about, what they were doing prior to moving over into the Street Trucks role. And that is that is the reason why Courtney essentially was the editor of MiniTruckin only for 8 issues. Now, when we break this down, we're going to basically break down that same grid. So you basically have Courtney Halliwell from issue 81, which is September 98. That was the cool 10th anniversary issue. All the way to issue 88. So those 8 issues, that was until April 99, so mid-April. You had John Motta. Now, John, I couldn't find a photo of John, but this is one from one of his editorials in the publication when he was the editor. He was an editor for 25 issues, okay? So from May 2012 to May 2014, and you can see the issue count there if that's something that you're interested in. The OG Mike Shartsis, okay? So he, again, worked at this publication back to like the early days. But again, when you slice and dice it and go, hey, how long was he editor? He was the editor for 32 issues from January 96 until midway through 98, August 98. And Steve Stillwell, this is a photo from his Street Trucks days, of course. You see the apparel that Steve has on. He was the editor technically for the longest period of time, about 7.5 years. Although, again, we're going to look at this in just a moment. He was the editor for 48 total issues. So if you count back to the summer of 88, issue number 1, and you go all the way to issue 48, December 95, before they turned the reins over to Shartsis, there you have Steve Stillwell's tenure at the publication as the editor. Of course, he was still in the catbird seat at Truckin, doing his dang thing until the late 90s. And then we have Lance Martz. Shout out to Lance. I got a chance to meet him last year. He signed my issue. Now, I had met Lance prior, like at shows, like back in the day at ShowFest, many moons ago. We probably, exchanged a word or something like that. But I got a chance to say, hey, what up to him? He signed my issue with Desert Runner. He was the editor for 76 issues, so May of 99 all the way until August of 05, which was issue 164. So 76 issues, that's a long time. And then shout out to Lance there. And then Mike Alexander. Now, Mike has, I think if you look at the time period, I think he comes in just under maybe about the 7-year mark as editor. So a little less than, again, Stillwell's tenure. However, by this time, September 05, they're already 10 years into monthly publication. So you have issue 165, which was September of 05, all the way to April of 2012. Mr. Mike Alexander is the editor. And technically, over the course of that time, that's 80 issues. So congrats to him if you're really kind of scoring at home. Now, next we want to talk about, I was trying to think of the word to use here. I used reoccurrence just because I couldn't figure out what I wanted to use. But here's a monthly breakdown. So as I mentioned, the publication began kind of as a special issue to somewhat gauge the interest. This is, how I'm sure a lot of publications started back in the day. Throw it out there, see if it sells, see if there's advertisers. And of course, because they already had Truckin, they knew, hey, we can lean over on some of these other advertisers to advertise in this book, so to speak. This led to quarterly issues, which led to bi-monthly issues. What we're going to do is we're going to take a look now at kind of a visual of how these issues break down. Now, some of you know Thomas Cardinal. Thomas put together a checklist of sorts, which is pretty cool. I know he's really passionate about collecting the magazines as well. I am as well. He's helped me a couple times over the course of time. This is just to kind of give you an idea that it takes from 1988 all the way until 1995 for the issues to essentially become monthly, 100%. So if we look at 88, you have the one issue. You roll into the winter time in 88 going into 89, and MiniTruckin says, okay, we're going to do our first issue of 89, winter 89. Okay. So, that becomes issue 2, right? So you have 4 issues in 89. You have 5 in 90. Okay. The significance here, if you're watching on YouTube in 1990, after the fall issue, they come out with a November issue. So that's the first time, November 1990 is the first time we have a month designation of the publication. Okay. We're still not monthly. 1991 rolls around, they skip December with the grid shows. And of course, now you are on January 91. So for 91, you have January, March, May, July, September, November, kind of that bi-monthly status. 92 comes around and it pretty much matches 91. They say, hey, we're going to stay bi-monthly. 93, same thing. By the time we get to 94, things are starting to ramp up. Things are probably selling well. The advertising dollar is there. And you have a very similar look to 93. But with 1994, you have January, March, May, July, August. So July, August, you're like, okay, we're starting to get to monthly. July, August, September, boom, there's no October. Okay, then there's November, December. So my guess is in 94, they were probably ready to rock and roll. Something happened production-wise. They weren't able to produce an October issue of 94. So because of that, that July, August, September streak that they had started 3 months in a row, boom, was broken. Okay, now you roll into November, December. When you get to 1995, that's when, believe it or not, depending on how you slice the dice, at about 7 years in, you're now a monthly publication, and that's basically getting the 12 issues per month or per year, excuse me. That's key because what we're experiencing now, more in this homegrown type situation with Matt and the team there, they're doing a great job. And I think we saw that same thing with All Time Low. It's really hard if you've got a magazine that you've homegrown to bring back and go, hey, we're going to do 12 out of the gate. Like, nobody does that, right? You do one, maybe you do a couple in a year. But I really love that they did 3 issues year one. They had a very fair price point. And oh, by the way, for 2025, they're going to do 4 issues. Now, I do want to stop for just a moment and show you on their website. If you go to minitruckinmag.net, again, this is the return, as I'll refer to it as, and um, you can come out here and you can go to the merch and you can buy the subscription. So 2025 subscription. Now, I had not looked at this prior. It's $40 and you're going to get 4 issues. So about $10. And I think if I remember correctly, shipping is included in that. They do have some hats. I'm wearing one of my hats here, but you can, get a chance to see what you can do for the subscription for 2025. Okay. So let's look at the photographers again. This episode's not going to be too much longer, but between staff and freelancers, give or take, there's about 45 total credited photographers, give or take, during the original run of the magazine. That's what I'm focused on today. Now, did you know the top 4 photographers are below? So you have Wes Allison, who is going to be inducted into the Mini Truck Hall of Fame next week in Las Vegas. He had 57 total credited covers, and here's the fun fact, were all solo credit. So that was an amazing run. Mike Alexander with 28. He did have a few that he was like co-credited. That's no slight, but of course, like in the, even with Shartsis, Courtney Hallowell, Sean Carlson, some different folks, they, would often be there and they were helping out. So they would get the co-credit. Shartsis with 27 and then Lance with 25. I mean, that's still a lot. If you think about, being an editor for like, let's say 76 or 80 issues and you shot a quarter of those or more, certainly that's a big total. But shout out to Wes Allison. The magazine, the publication itself leaned a lot on him. And he's one of the all-time greats. He was working up until I think, this year or last year. I think he's retired now, but he is definitely a great guy. Now, many covers had dual credits, as I mentioned at the bottom, for the cover shoots, which, may have included the main photos. Sometimes you'd have a guy that would shoot the main photo and then, the other guy would go, hey, I'm going to do all the interior photos and stuff. But regardless, the good thing for the most part, if we trust the publication, those credits were given. Now, the credit wasn't always given in the table of contents. I mentioned this prior. If the table of contents said, hey, Mike Alexander, but the feature itself said, Mike Alexander and Shartsis or Mike Alexander and Courtney, I would go by what the feature said because that is, boom, that's the gospel as far as the magazine goes. Okay, we're going to start wrapping this up with the shorter episode, OEMs. So which OEM make do you think graced the covers the most? So I say make, but what OEM in general? So the original equipment manufacturer, what truck manufacturer do you think graced the cover of the magazine the most? Well, if you said Toyota, I love what you do for me, Toyota, you would have guessed correctly. Now, this does get a little bit confusing because, if you really look at all of the issues, not every issue had just one truck. So I just want to keep it very, very simple and just say, I did look at like the group photos. What were the main trucks? If there were 2 trucks, if there were 2 Fords, that was Ford gets the credit. If there's a Ford and a Nissan, each of them, that type of thing. But basically what you want to know is Toyota had 78 covers. They were on 78 covers. Chevy 71, Nissan with 45, Mazda with 33, and then Ford with 25. The rest you can kind of see there how they pan out if you're watching on YouTube, which I suggest. Okay, so this was one of my favorite things to put together. I put together a video prior. It's on our channel. It's called MiniTruckin Magazine Logo History. So I was able to kind of curate this information, and I will have a visual for you here. I meant to put a few more visuals in here, but I just kind of ran out of time. But what I will tell you is there were 6 different logos, believe it or not, during the initial run. Now, absolutely, with the return, what Logan and Matt have done, that is a new chapter. And of course, that will be covered in the future. But the originality of the magazine from 88 to 2014, you had the OG logo. The gray grid is what I refer to it as, the yellow spider web, which I came up with that when I was putting this together. The spider web removed, the new logo with the new font, and then the new logo again with the new font. And this is the visual for those listening or watching, if you will, on YouTube. You have the upper right or upper left is the original logo. Alan Paradise was on the podcast, and Alan graciously covered some pretty cool facts about those early days, how that logo came about, and then the team's discussion on wanting to change it, and him going to an individual, and what resulted with the logo 2 that, of course, started on issue 2. Now, if we jump back a slide and we look at logo 3, that started, believe it or not, on issue 6. So the ironic thing is, so many of us love that sticker with the grid pattern, okay? But that was only on 4 issues. You have logo 3 that ran from uh, issue 6 all the way to issue 55, okay? The 4th logo was essentially the same, but they removed the spider web grid or whatever you want to call it there. So that was issue 56 to issue 79. Logo number 5 came on issue 80, which was the 10th anniversary issue with Bobby Billiard. Of course, the Master Image Customs orange truck, which was pretty awesome. That was a 10th anniversary issue. And that logo at that time lasted a long time, from issue 80 all the way to issue 144. The last logo comes at issue 145, the lower right, and that lasts all the way until 269. So it's pretty cool when you look at it and visually you can see it and go, wow, okay, yeah, I remember. Wow, I never thought about it changed that much. But there you have it. So miscellaneous, personally, I still need to update my list, but in my database, I did a quick look, and I still need to go through and check everything. But I've seen at least 63 show trucks or cover trucks in person. And that's pretty cool to me because, I put that data point in there because I was like, man, I've seen that truck. Man, I've seen that truck. And it's cool. And like even at Mini Nats this year, one of our favorite shows in Maggie Valley, I got to see the Blazer that MIC built back in the day that was on the cover. And of course, that thing is kind of in the rebuilding stages, and the gentleman brought it from the West. But it was still neat to be able to tick that one off and go, wow, tick it off the list, because saw it in person. Pretty cool. Stood the test of time, still around. Now, I'll do further breakdowns, as I mentioned, on the YouTube channel for members. I have a lot more breakdown. I can break down the wheels that were on every single cover. We could talk about wire wheels, how many issues had those, the truck clubs, who got, the recognition there. Some of those videos are going to start out as member only content, and then we'll see if we trickle that stuff down. But certainly, everybody that comes here and shows love and likes the videos and comments and things like that, if you can go a step further and become a member, it helps us out. In closing, ODB's picks. So my favorite issue, I might be biased, but it might be the issue that you see on the left with Bada Bing. Okay, how could I not love that issue? I've got the plaques here, and my dad really loved seeing that truck on the cover, even more so than I did. And I'm very thankful for John Mata helping make that happen, as well as Phil Gordon for shooting it. It just was like a lifetime dream, and it's still surreal to me that my truck was on the cover. Now, my favorite cover besides Bada Bing, I would say probably January 93. So many of us love, I have an autographed copy over here of Ballistic. Pat Nickel, super OG, been on the podcast. He's, a friend of ours, I would say. Just a great guy, and I absolutely love that truck like many of you do. And it was so cool to see Randy build the tribute truck. So shout out to Randy and the big homie. And then my favorite trucks. Okay, I had to put an S on there. This could probably change over the course of time, but I will tell you, if I was on the spot, I'm always going to go last look. Okay, I've seen the truck in person at Nopi. I took a bunch of photos of it, took a bunch of video of it, which I don't have the videos anymore. It wasn't just on one cover. This is a whole nother episode. I mean, this truck transcended genres. It really did. And it's crazy if you think about some of the airbrush, the books and the magazines that this thing was on. And oh, by the way, how many covers it was on for MiniTruckin. People forget about that. That's a whole nother video. But certainly Last Look, arguably one of the baddest ever built. There's no doubt about it. The paint is still, you know, they helped set that goal for so many people on the type of paint that they wanted, you know, or the detail, you know, painting all the interior, you know, Sean Carlson, you know, shooting it and having his hands in it, and Dion and Craig, and you know, and K Daddy and all of them. I mean, just so iconic. So that's why there's 2 photos there. Sean Carlson took those, rest in peace. He's also being voted into the Mini Truck Hall of Fame this year. And there's, you know, a photo that you may have never seen, the top one here, when she changed her outfit. I also would have to put Ballistic up there. You know, Ballistic, again, that cover, so many of us, you know, our ears went up, you know, we were like, wow, this truck is low. This truck is awesome. We love that paint color. We love the topper. It just had all of the right ingredients. And then I would also say Ryan Fringlinghaus's 90s Lolo. I have currently nicknamed my 90 Mazda 90 Lolo, which is kind of a nod to Ryan's truck. Of course, it's nowhere on that level. They recently rebuilt it, and I'd love to talk about that in the future. But it's pretty cool, you know, looking back at that truck. And I used to study that feature, you know, knowing Wes shot it, and just it's so iconic, you know, Ryan Fringlinghaus, West Coast Customs, that entire, you know, company they've built. It's just insane. So those are some of my picks there. What I'm going to do is stop sharing my screen and say, wow, that's it. I'm under 40 minutes. I appreciate everybody that watches all the way through. If you can leave a comment, I certainly appreciate that. One last thing that I want to do is I'm going to start giving shout outs to any new members that join us on YouTube. But what I want to do is the subscribers. We got a bunch of subscribers. And then if we take a look at the matters, we got Jason Nethers and Matt Nupp, as I said. So I really appreciate you, Jay. I really appreciate you, Matt. Those are the newest members, and I certainly appreciate that. So we're going to continue this thing of ours. I have hundreds of magazines. I have some coming now that most has probably never been seen in the US, which is just insane. And I'm looking forward to continuing to do this, but it's got to be a balance, right? The podcast can't go too long anymore. We're still going to have guests, but we're going to get right to the point and have the guest on. We're going to do a lot of stuff through social media, but we're also going to do shorter videos here on YouTube to get all this cool content out to you. Thank you so much to all of our sponsors, including our title sponsor, Scraping the Coast. And I'll continue to give everybody shout outs through social media and here when applicable. Much love, everyone. Stay on the rise. If you're into voting, don't forget next week you want to go vote. If you're watching the World Series, check it out and have a happy Halloween. If you're going to SEMA next week, this is late breaking news. I'm not going to be able to make it, unfortunately. So it's kind of a letdown on myself, but I've got some other things, some family stuff I got to attend to. So I'm going to be dealing with that. But I know Radar is going to hold it down. Much love, everyone. Have fun at the Freaks of Nature SEMA kickoff party. Tip of the cap to Shannon. We out ya.